Okay, thank you.
And Director Riley is having trouble logging in, so see if he's on as attendee.
Hello, Fran. Hello, John.
All right, I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Roll call vote,
Yes,
roll call.
committee member Paw,
Here.
committee member Riley, Chair Edwards.
Here.
We have a quorum of the committee.
Okay, before we get started in public comment, I'd like to do some adjusting to the agenda. First with the action items. Action item 1 can stay, 2 can stay. 3, I like to change that to after our budget mid-year review. We can put it on next month, or we can talk about it at the end of March with the full board. Find out what we want to do with that one before we add a new project into the budget. Let's see what the budget look like. Number 4.
Yeah, what's the ramification of waiting on that one, Maureen?
John, what are your thoughts?
So can you, I'm sorry, Director Alvin, can you repeat your question?
On the two Lucidos, just
Okay.
deferring that contract award till after mid-year budget.
After mid-year budget, and we can talk about it a little bit more at the March 34 planning session that we got. If we're going to add it into next year, because I like to know where we're going to go after that is completed. He says, I read it said it takes 6 months. Let's talk about what's going to happen after. It's just not going to sit on the shelf. So let's start thinking about that, and let's talk about it at March 6th. I mean, the March 31st meeting.
The strategic planning?
Yeah, our planning session, yes.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate, Director. This is the contract and work was motivated out of the strategic planning and kind of it was at one point in time a 2-year goal for the district to investigate this, and then was made a priority to investigate it. So if you would like to revisit it in that format and make any changes to it, that's appropriate.
Okay, not saying I wouldn't do it, but let's see what we got and make sure we're not going over budget with some of this stuff.
My only concern, if I may, Alvin, is I wouldn't want to spend too much time in the strategic planning session on the details of the contract. I don't know if we're going to need much, review of about the project and the details and the cost, but that seems like we wouldn't want to use our time for that in the strategic planning.
I plan for it and hope that is short and brief. I just want to make sure we're not going over budget, planning on going. If we're in a deficit right now at mid-year, why want to push ahead to go more in deficit until I find out?
Yeah, I can give you a little preview. When we adopted the budget, we were relying on almost $2 million of reserves. That's pretty much reversed completely out. We're heading into very balanced and actually making contributions to reserves, and that's because we put in a placeholder of about $1.5 million or $1.7 million for a new well to benefit Seaside, and that's gone nowhere. So this agreement for the two Lucidos is not going to have any significant impact. John, did you include this money in your mid-year budget request?
It was actually in the original budget, so it was, yeah. And I just would, while I have the floor, offer up that it's an important piece to show work towards trying to protect the 2808B water rights. We're trying not to put ourselves in a situation where the Monterey County found themselves, where the Water Rights Board comes and says, you haven't done anything, you haven't done any studies, you haven't done anything. And so that it's kind of a dual
Yeah,
benefit.
Yeah,
project.
I'd encourage this committee to just go ahead and recommend approval. And then we can take it to finance and administration next week and move it forward because it has been budgeted. Our financial picture is going to be so much better off, not worse off, with the mid-year budget. We have a managers meeting on that tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So I don't know. It's your
Okay.
call, Chair.
Okay, we'll go ahead as long as we not, I don't want to hear no bad numbers.
All right. So
At that board meeting. That's why
Yeah.
I'm delaying some of this stuff, but y'all want to go ahead, we'll go ahead. Item number 4, we'll go ahead with. In discussion items, if item number 5, is that crucial that we get it done right away?
Well, I think we're heading in this direction anyway, so this was just to apprise the committee. We had been meeting on Pure Water Monterey operations, but everything's getting so intertwined at this point on the Seaside Basin, especially with some of the renewed discussion over protective water levels and consultants and so forth that we could choose to drop it, or you can just make it like an informational item and receive it. But we're heading in this direction anyway of kind of revising the way the meetings are run and agendized.
Okay. Well, we can revisit that if y'all want to do some of the stuff. I feel that the full board should hear, like number 6, the overview of FEMA and Cal OSHA. I think the full board should hear that, not just water supply. So if you can put that on the agenda or check with the chair and vice chair, see if they want to put that on the agenda for the full board.
Yep.
And number 7, I like to move that up as soon as possible. That's what this meeting is about. And number 8, discussion Pure Water Monterey legal expenses. I think the full board ought to hear that one. So we can move that one into the budget review. Because I think it's going to be something, we're going to have to adjust that, so they might as well hear it.
Yeah,
And-
at some point, I would like to hear an explanation about number 5 and how what this change means. It doesn't have to be at today's meeting necessarily, but.
Well, if the general manager can check with the chair, things like that, I like the full board to hear, so everybody be appraised of what's going on. So if you want to put it on the agenda and it's place for it, and we're not bogged down.
Okay, yeah, we can put it on the board agenda. It's okay with.
Mr. Chair, if you could, I'm not hearing any specific changes to the agenda as published. What I am hearing is the issue of whether it should become a discussion item for action by the full board. If so, that could be part of your recommendation once you've had the presentations and discussions here today.
Well,
Now, if you want to change the order, like for example, with 7 and 8, to bring those up as the first discussion items, then if you'll clarify so any public members, can follow exactly where we are with the agenda.
okay, well, I was trying to get us out of hearing it twice. That was my purpose, so I don't have to hear it twice. But if you feel like we got to go through all this, I like members. Number 7 is more important to me than a lot of all of this. So we can proceed on.
Well, you can change the order if you want on discussion items to take up item 7 first on discussion.
Yeah, well, we can do that when we get down there to them. I think we just about wrapped it out. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you,
It's
sir.
always nice to have an attorney here.
Can I just,
Okay.
I came in late, excuse me, can I just ask, what was the nature, what was being discussed? Excuse me.
Just changing some of the stuff on the agenda, George.
Oh, just the order, okay, and the.
Yeah,
okay, fair enough.
changing some of the stuff and taking some of the stuff off for the full board to hear. Unless,
Okay.
you know, our attorney, you know,
Okay.
we might be hearing this stuff twice. I tried to cut it down because I got that big discussion item on number 7 is more important than quite a
Okay.
bit of this, but we got it settled.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I'm just looking for context. Thank you.
All right. We have roll call. Okay, comments from the public. Joel, would you open up public comment?
Yes, this portion of the agenda is for general public comment on items not listed on today's agenda. If you would like to make public comment, please raise your hand, or if you're calling in, push *9. And Chair Edwards, at this time, I do not see any hands raised, so I return this back to the committee.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jim, let's start with number 1 and you can take us through them.
Yep, number 1 is adoption of the minutes. There have been some minor changes made and revisions were sent out earlier today.
Yeah, and thank you for those, you know, clarifying some of the more technical aspects of the minutes. I have a few more non-substantive corrections that I've talked with Joel about offline that I can send after. I think they're non-substantive, just little grammatical things. So, but I think we should, so I can send those to Joel after the meeting.
That
Okay,
works.
okay, do we have a
Public comment?
motion on this?
So I move that we approve the minutes with the corrections that were made before the meeting, shortly before the meeting, and a few non-substantive changes, corrections that I'll send after the meeting.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Joel, check with the public, make sure we don't have,
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on item number 1, please raise your hand. Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands.
okay, a roll call vote, please.
Committee Member Paw,
Yes,
Committee Member Riley,
Aye.
Chair Edwards,
Aye.
the motion is adopted.
Okay, item number 2, Jim.
Item number 2 is the proposed meeting schedule for the year. There are 6 meetings. They occur every other month. The first one on this list is today's meeting. So we just need a motion to approve the schedule and a second and a vote.
move to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay. None discussion, check with the public.
Yes, if you would like to make public comment on item number 2, please raise your hand. Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands.
Okay,
And
roll
then
call
the
vote.
maker of the motion was Paw, and that was seconded by Chair Edwards. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, Committee Member Riley,
Aye.
Committee Member Paw,
Yes,
Chair Edwards,
Yes.
the
Aye.
motion is adopted.
Thank you.
through the chair.
Yes.
If I may, I'd just like to say that this new schedule of alternating demand and water supply planning, which was Dave Stoll, that was your suggestion last year. It seems like a good schedule, a good arrangement. Seems to be working well.
Okay, thank you for the comment. I agree with you. Item number 3.
Yes, this is the item that we discussed tabling for the full board or addressing today. The reason it's important to move it along is we do have a strategy that we've put into place over the permits. 20808B is the remainder permit, and A and C are the 2 permits that we've severed off for purposes of the ASR project. And so in our discussion with the State Water Board, we have said, leave our permits alone as we continue to diligently study other alternative uses of the old Los Padres Dam Reservoir water permit. With that, I'll turn it over to Maureen, I believe this is your item.
Sure. Like Dave said, we hold a water right permit to divert 18,674 acre feet a year from the Carmel River. In order to not lose that permit, we need to demonstrate progress towards making beneficial use of the water right permit. Staff has identified a Tularcitos ASR project that we feel is definitely worth pursuing. That project would divert water from the Carmel River, where it joins the Tularcitos Creek, convey it up to the Chupinas Creek subwatershed for storage and subsequent recovery. The work that needs to be done next is to run the Carmel River Basin hydrologic model. That model run would determine the amount of water that would be available out of the Carmel River. It would create a hydrogeologic framework and cross sections in the area of interest, and then model the feasibility of an ASR well field or well site in the Chupinas Creek subwatershed, along with providing a size estimate for storage and recovery. The last step would be selecting sites for further geologic investigation. And we are recommending that we go with Montgomery and Associates. Montgomery and Associates manages the Seaside Groundwater Basin model. And additionally, they have recently come on board with us to support the Carmel River Basin hydrologic model that USGS used to support, but has recently said they can no longer support. So we're asking the estimate for the work. I'd love to say, George, I'm cheap, and Director Edwards, I'd love to say I'm cheap and could knock that estimate down from $119,000 to $119, but that was, I'm sure, a typo that was picked up.
And you picked it up.
I'd love to knock it down to that, but no. So the estimate for that is $119,200, and this would go through administrative committee. Are there any questions?
Any questions? We'll take Director Paul and then Director Rowell.
So if this ASR project turns out to be feasible, the water would be for use when it's extracted for use in the Carmel Valley region area?
Yes, the area is just a little bit east of Carmel Valley Village, and the well field that would store at the Chupinas Creek is northeast of where Tularcitos joins in.
Got it. Thank you.
Director Rowley, go ahead.
All right, is that area served by CalAm now?
The village is, but the watershed is not.
And do they have a local office? Because I'm seeing Montgomery Associates show up more and more. I'm on the water master. I see them over there too. Do they have a local? Or are they up in Oakland?
They're located in Oakland.
Okay, no problem. I just didn't know whether they had a local office because I see them a lot.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
Well, I move approval. I'm really curious about what the scale of this might look like, and I don't think we'll know that until we get the data.
Okay. Do I have a second on it?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have discussion. Quick discussion. I just hope I read in here that it'd be done in 6 months. 6 months, and I think y'all was sitting up there talking about, y'all put a little contingency out on it. I hope they're ready in 6 months, or we get informed a lot earlier, or don't wait till the 6 months and say we're going to be late. So,
Well, and to your earlier point, it may sit on a shelf after completion. Part of this is, what's the capability or what's the capacity, and but the delivery mechanism, if you allow the creek to be the deliverer, then it would flow back into the the Carmel River, and there would be losses by the time it would get to a point of diversion. But those are all the kinds of things we can look at going forward. There may not be a pressing need to expand ASR. We've got a couple of other projects too that could make use of that 2808B remainder right, including a new well all the way down near Cod to benefit the reclamation project. So there's different ideas out there, but to avoid a revocation hearing on the water right itself, we need to do some of this work. So,
Okay. Joel, could you please take it out to the public?
Yes, so if you have public comment on this matter, please raise your hand. Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands, so I return this back to the committee.
Okay, let's take a roll call vote.
Committee Member Riley,
Aye.
Committee Member Paul,
Yes,
Chair Edwards.
Aye.
The motion is adopted.
Okay, next item.
Dave, you're muted.
this one's relatively straightforward. I had shown this committee a draft of the agreement. We were just waiting on updated numbers, which we now have. And so prospectively, we think this will put the district on the hook for $42,269.55. So I put in the cost estimate with a small contingency of $46,500. And it just needs our approval. This is the suggested allocation of only 15% to the district. So we're being a good neighbor, but not the lead funder.
Okay, question, Director Rowell.
Well, it's not a question, it's a comment from the water master point of view. They were looking at a three-party agreement shared in 1/3 each. And the district has no direct benefit from this well, but the other two agencies do. And so we are a regional partner here, but because we're interested in, having a full understanding and a good cooperation and a good database with other agencies as well. So we get the data as well.
Okay, yes, and at that meeting, they waiting on this, but after I read the staff report, I like our staff report. I think we used 60,000 to destroy that last well. I hope they understand that. So I agree with the numbers that we got here. And I was looking in there in the minutes earlier, that was stated. But in the staff report, it wasn't stated. But we destroyed that well, and that was about 60,000. So I think we up to par with our costs on what it should be. So I agree with that. Director Paul, you have anything?
well, I agree with what you just said. It's a good balance, I think.
Yes, it's a good balance. And I know at their last water master meeting, they're waiting on this. So if they got complaints about it, I think Director Raleigh can clear it up on while we sitting there to argue the point with them. All right. Joel, take it out to the public.
Yes, so if you have public comment on this matter, please raise your hand. Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Committee Member Riley,
Aye.
Committee Member Paul,
Yes,
Chair Edwards,
Aye.
the motion is adopted.
Okay. We got through those pretty good. Discussion item. I would like to move number 7 to number 1, so we can have the time to discuss it.
Hearing no objections. So let's start with item 7 and see if we can get back to any of the others. Item 7, you'll find a fairly detailed staff report about the potential for financing and constructing the Pure Water Monterey expansion without the participation of Cal-Am in the water purchase agreement. what I've done here is I've taken an approach to say, you know, there's additional questions that need to be asked and analyzed, which are raised first in this report. And then the how we would do it, the financing structure, is kind of the second half of the report. Let me start with that because that's the most straightforward. And that is that before Christmas, after the December 1st decision was rendered, and the week later, Cal-Am saying that they had second thoughts about signing the water purchase agreement pending greater rate recovery. Our agency, Marina Coast Water District, and Monterey One Water all agreed to meet at my level. And then we met again shortly after the first of the year to discuss how it could be done. And I think our conclusion, as reflected here, is that Marina Coast shows an interest in helping facilitate it and would be willing to put their agency up as a borrower. But then they would need to turn around and sell the water to the district for eventual storage. So in discussing this with our CFO, with Suresh, we don't foresee any issues that would stand in the way of the district itself becoming the borrower. The only difference being, I think both us and Marina Coast would need to do a Prop 218 revenue raise, but we additionally would have to get our credit rating secured, which will very likely be very good investment grade in the A to AA minus category, similar to Marina Coast. So, but that can be done simultaneously. It's something we may want to consider doing anyway, just as a operating special district. So the preferred borrower of the proceeds would be the district. We would turn that money over to Monterey One Water for construction. There is an outside chance that the WIFIA loan would remain intact, and the EPA may decide that they still want Monterey One to be the loan recipient because the property is their property, it's inside their building, you know, on an existing pad and an existing area for new RO racks. So if WIFIA still would consider issuing the loan and only would issue it to Monterey One Water, then we would revise the water purchase agreement to become what's a take or pay contract, meaning the district would obligate itself to pay the debt service through the water sales, even if there was an interruption in the delivery of water, which is a little bit different than the existing contract with Cal-Am. We would have to undertake a Prop 218 protest hearing process. The risk there is that when we did the water supply charge in 2012, the Taxpayers Association ran a direct mail campaign to try to protest the water supply charge. It's unclear if moving forward with the expansion without Cal-Am would be a lightning rod or a rallying cry to try to run another protest hearing. Typically, you don't see more than 5% protests on any water, sewer, or refuse rate hearing. So 10,000 is an unusual number, unusually high for California. I included the timeline for the 2012 process. I don't think that we have to worry about this calendar year. If we approved a Prop 218 but didn't make it by August 1 to get it on the property tax rolls, it's probably not an issue because I think we probably structured the debt to have a capitalized interest period anyway, or an interest only period. And then by capitalizing that, that means you don't have to pay it out of pocket, so that you wouldn't begin repayment of the debt until the project comes online and there's water to sell. If WIFIA is no longer available, then as I mentioned earlier, the district would move forward as the issuer in the tax exempt debt market. And we would then have a series of things that I've outlined here, which are net revenue pledge, what's called a rate covenant, a whole variety of things, but none of these are insurmountable or even scary. It's doable. So I guess, the takeaway is, yes, it can be financed. It would have to be financed off the constituents of the district, which are the same as the ratepayers of Cal-Am. The purpose would likely have to be considered somewhat differently, and that would be a portion for drought reserve, a large portion for protective water levels, for which the district could sell the water to the water master if the water master could come up with a funding source, or the district could choose to do on its own as part of protecting the Monterey Peninsula water resource system. And we could be building up a supply for future sale to third parties like Marina Coast Water District, or even at some point Cal-Am. That kicks us back to the front end of the memorandum, which is really key questions.
Can I just back up quickly, Dave? Which are the WIFIA loans or loan?
Yeah, so the WIFIA loan, we need to distinguish between grants and loans, right? So we've got commitments for 4 grants, 3 of which are from the state of California, and 1 of which is federal through the Bureau of Reclamation Title 16 program. So those are all grant monies. That adds up to about 42 million. That would make the conceivable cost of the project 34 million. And the 34 million would then be subject to funding through the WIFIA loan.
Okay.
So that's the permanent financing is the WIFIA program. It stands for Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act. And it was modeled on the TIFIA program, which is a transportation loan program that's been around a number of years. WIFIA itself's only really gotten going in the last 3 years.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
What was the level of protest when you did the Prop 218 process the last time?
Very significant. It was about 10,000.
Yeah, you mentioned that number. I wasn't.
Yeah, there were actually closer to 15, but many of them were not property owners with the ability to protest, and many of them were duplicates.
I see.
But that's the byproduct of a direct mail campaign, which
Sure.
Certain people just said, "Oh, okay, I'm going to protest this thing," not knowing that they didn't have the right to do so.
And how many valid protests would you have needed to defeat the Prop 218 measure?
I'm going to look that up right now. So we can go to another question while I'm looking for that one.
Well, just as an additional comment, the League of Women Voters, I remember there was an objection about the validity of the decisions that were made about incomplete ballots or improper ballots and so on. The League formed a small committee and reviewed the process and agreed that it was fairly administered. So there was an outside party that looked at the validity of the decisions about which were valid votes and which were not. I just add that.
Yeah, and I think they're still in a closet downstairs in our conference room if anybody wanted to look at them.
I might.
Oh, okay, Dave. I see on page 52 of the staff report, you talk about the jurisdictions and they franchise.
Right.
Let's go over that a little bit.
Yeah, so, in our discussion, we said, the ultimate goal of doing this water supply project was to solve the peninsula's water supply problem, lift the CDO, lift the moratorium on meters, so we can build housing and we can create jobs. And just putting the water into the ground for protected water levels doesn't necessarily get you that. And in fact, it could have other harmful repercussions, like Cal-Am could say, oh, it's no longer a viable alternative water supply outside the coastal zone. Therefore, I need my desal plant even more than I did before. So we looked at, in a perfect world, Central Coast Community Energy. Basically they're an aggregator. And the way the first Assembly bill and then subsequent Assembly and Senate bills created that body of law that allowed the community energy said, hey, a public agency can go out and find a source of energy or multiple sources of energy and force the local retailer to deliver that energy. So, and I kind of laugh, but would it have been so hard for whoever wrote the first Assembly bill to say energy or water, add the words or water, which would have meant that all that legislation that enabled it in the electricity side would have also applied to any of the investor-owned utilities, but they didn't. So there is no program through the Public Utilities Commission that allows an aggregator like ourselves, like the district, to compel the retailer, Cal-Am in this case, to deliver this water to those customers. And that would be similar to, getting together with the 6 peninsula cities and saying, hey, let's form, one big aggregator, and we're going to go out and get the cheapest new water supply, Pure Water Monterey expansion, and let's have that delivered to the customer. So no model exists to do that. So then the second thought was, well, I have seen franchise agreements that make place certain requirements on where the water can come from, for example. Even Cal-Am itself has a franchise agreement with the county of Placer County, California, up in their northern division, where their franchise agreement makes a statement that none of the water that they're serving the customers can come from groundwater supplies except in one specific area. So you can have franchise agreements that place requirements on the utility provider. So the thought here was, well, if the franchise was conditioned upon, like the city of Monterey saying, I want you to buy, half our water from Pure Water Monterey expansion, and city of Seaside saying, we want the other half of that expansion water coming to Seaside, then you could make the case that the conditions precedent to lifting the CDO exist, because now Pure Water Monterey water is being delivered for customer usage. So we went through all the franchise agreements, which you can see there. It may be possible that Monterey did already renegotiate theirs. Seaside says that theirs is either expired as of right now or will expire based on how you interpret the termination year. But those two jurisdictions have sufficient size that if they could renegotiate and say, we want, half of Pure Water Monterey to go to Seaside and half of Pure Water Monterey expansion, to go to Monterey, then you would have achieved that goal of delivering this water to customers, offsetting the withdrawals on the river, and be in a position to lift the cease and desist order. The problem with that is, or what I'd say the practical problem is, let's say a franchise agreement has expired. If I'm the company, I say, well, look over there. Those are my pipes. That's my water in the pipes. Those are my meters at each customer. What are you going to do to me, Mr. City? And once they do expire, the utility is also not compelled to deliver its 2% franchise fee to the same city. And so the city is very likely to say, well, I really want my franchise fee, and I don't see any other alternative provider stepping in to run your system in our streets in our city. So there's very little leverage a city would have over the franchise agreement. But because it is a legal agreement, one would think that you have to give some nod to negotiation and leverage. But that would be the only way we could imagine that would move the purpose of the project from just putting water in the ground for protective water levels and reserves to actually affecting the CDO and the moratorium.
Question.
Okay, go ahead.
So does Cal-Am actually need these franchise agreements? Because your notes say that they have none with Carmel, the city of Carmel.
None with Sand City.
Others haven't been renewed,
Right. The one in Carmel is via ordinance, and it's in perpetuity, but they don't seem to have one with the city of Sand City.
So what happens if they don't have a franchise agreement, or the city of Monterey and Seaside say we're not going to renew it unless you agree to this condition? Then what happens?
Right.
Maybe it's a question for council.
Well, and so what you'd have in that case is you need to replace me. Let's work a transition out, and then the replacement would come in, and then Cal-Am would have to say, well, I need to be compensated for giving up all of the infrastructure that I've built in your city. And then it would be very similar to Measure J, trying to put a price on it just for that piece of the distribution system. It'd be messy. It'd be very messy.
Yeah, I don't think the cities want to fool with it, but we need to ask that question to them if they're willing. You said two cities, Monterey and Seaside. We just need to check and see if they renewed their franchise agreement, and you can throw the argument out to them. I know what they probably say. No, they don't want to deal with that in a way, but I feel that question needs to be asked if we could go that way.
Yeah, so I have communicated with the city attorney at Seaside and the mayor at Monterey, and gave them some descriptive language, and actually gave Monterey a copy of their own franchise agreement. City of Seaside thought Monterey might have renewed theirs. The copy that I had that Fran had located for me had it expiring on the date that you saw in the memo, 2019. So, but yeah, we need to follow back up on that.
Yes. Any other questions right now? If none, I like to bring up something with the PUC. It seems like we cannot get an answer from the PUC on this item right here. If they're going to move ahead or not move ahead with making Cal-Am sign the water purchase agreement. That question been out there for about 3 or 4 months now. Fran, I wonder, can we do anything? Can we file a complaint against the PUC to answer that question? Here we go.
Well, we evaluated whether we should file another complaint when Cal-Am indicated they would not sign the amended water purchase agreement. But the decision was made, and correctly, I believe, to petition to modify the decision that came out December the 1st. And that's where we said, please compel Cal-Am to sign this agreement and compel them to construct the facilities that are needed for ASR to be successful. Yes, we are still waiting. But while it's frustrating for us, Cal-Am's still waiting on their rehearing petition or their application for rehearing for the additional 20 million that they didn't get authorized. So the commission is very familiar with the arguments that were made. I think this, and I'll just step back for a minute. They evaluated these arguments that Cal-Am has made on funding and why they feel they're entitled to more, and they disapproved it previously. So for the most part, it's questionable why they would change their position. the commission. And their practice generally is to deny rehearing applications and sometimes make minor changes to their decision, but not have a hearing on it. So in answer directly to your question, no, we're sitting here patiently because there's nothing we can do to move the matter further. And even when a decision comes out, regardless of who prevails, the other party will undoubtedly be challenging it at the California Supreme Court. So for us to proceed now to file another complaint similar to the one that we did in May of 2021, it doesn't play well with the commission for us. They know what our concern is. They know the water problems in this area. How they choose to remedy the situation, it's in their ball court. I'm sorry, which is probably why Measure J is even more important.
Okay, so we couldn't just send something up. I know it probably tee them off, but say, hey, we need an answer. I think the public needs an answer, and I don't mind taking to the board. I'm just one vote, taking to the board and say that we're gonna file this complaint. We need an answer and they need to answer it, and that's supposed to be a public agency.
But even if we file a complaint procedurally, Cal-Am then has at least 30 days to respond to that. We will not get a prompt decision from the commission, and we're prohibited under the ex parte rules from communicating directly with the commissioners. However, I will say this, the public has made their voice heard in record numbers, responding to some of the outreach that's encouraging them to urge the commission to have Cal-Am sign the agreement. So the public has expressed itself in large numbers. They know what's coming in. We can't push their process, unfortunately. It's not the answer you want to hear, but it's the answer procedurally at the commission. And I know that Director Paul can confirm everything that I have said as far as how they operate up there. Yeah.
Okay. Director Rowley, go ahead.
Well,
Then
also several cities have approved their own communication with the PUC asking for action. So I think if there's any more cities that might join that group, that would be very effective, because it's a new pitch. It's from a legitimate, affected agency, and a large one and a significant one. And that may be the place where, if there's going to move, if the PUC is going to move at all, they may move from some of the new pitches being made to them and the source of those pitches than anything new from the district.
Okay. Director Paul, go ahead.
Well, I just agree everything Fran said about the process. We can't file a complaint against the CPUC for taking too long to decide these things. There just isn't any basis for it. If the CPUC doesn't act on Cal-Am's application for a hearing, Cal-Am could then, it's deemed denied, and they could appeal and go to court, but they would be really stupid to do that, because their chances of success are very, very slim. I mean, and there isn't a deadline, if I'm not mistaken, Fran. There's not a time limit for the PUC to act on a petition for modification, which is what we filed, right?
Even if they say there's no penalty for them exceeding that time. And water is a stepchild at the PUC. We're not as sexy as energy and telecommunications. Yeah. So I think staff resources are more limited. This is in the legal division at the PUC right now, and they have their own process, which has to be rather meticulous. So they have everything they need to make a decision, but they're obviously researching and firming up what they want to write.
Okay. They could merge this in, and I know you can probably tell me your day. We haven't heard anything on supply and demand hearing yet, have we?
No.
Okay, so
no, and I think the reason is the project going forward? Because if there isn't an agreement to expand the water purchase or Pure Water Monterey, what's the point of having phase 2 on supply and demand? You know, they could say it's not timely at this point.
Don't they still need that information?
They might need it under the original 2012 filing. I'm just saying that the PUC isn't going to look at phase 2 until they've resolved phase 1. And we've had no activity on that whatsoever. We could have scheduled a hearing, what, more than 6 months ago, 8 months ago. And we were ready. Everything was organized for it. And then things came to a screeching halt. So no activity on phase 2 for supply and demand.
Okay, well.
So-
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, back on the earlier question. So we did receive 10,343 valid protests. That was about 34% of all parcels subject to the charge, which was a total of 30,509. So a 50% plus one protest would have been 15,255. So 10,000 is a big portion of that 50%, but it's only 34% total. But that's unheard of in most water district Prop 218s. Usually it's, as I said, 5% would be a lot of dissent or a lot of protest.
Okay, this is good information to have.
The next question, what will happen to those grants? Is one thing Monterey One Water brought it up to, hey, we're gonna lose grants. And then when we ask, we need to ask that question over there to them, what are we gonna do? I know what I wanna do, but what are they gonna do?
Right.
To help?
Yep. And again, my opinion on the grants is 3 of the 4 of them were about potable water supply to customers and would very likely be lost. The 4.8 million was specifically for an additional well to build a drought reserve, which seems like would be very consistent with what we're suggesting here if we just acquired the facility and bought the water for injection and protective water levels. But yeah, that would represent a very significant loss. And then again, I'm not clear whether the WIFI alone would apply or if it would have to be substituted with public debt.
Okay. Have you shared this report with Monterey One? Because my next question is, can we get a meeting with the recycled water control committee to talk about it? We need to know. We need to know if they're going to participate or not. I know the rumor might be out there that Cal-Am going to sign it, but Cal-Am haven't signed it. And if they don't sign it, what are we going to do?
Yep. So they have it and Marina Coast has it. And I've got a meeting with Marina Coast on Wednesday. I don't have a meeting set up with Monterey One Water yet. They're going to have a wide mixture of opinion on their board.
When you
Well-
say they have what, a request for the committees to meet jointly? Is that?
No, we don't have anything yet. I haven't. Paul just saw it on, I think Thursday or Friday, whenever it went out to the committee.
Oh, your memo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, GM, I'd like for you, if you could, set up a meeting for the public officials so we can finally discuss this and let's put it on the record on what we are going to do. I think people are waiting to see what are we going to do. We need to tell them what we can do and what will work and what won't work, and no need of doing that because of this. I think the public got to hear it. So if you can arrange a meeting with all three of us, those public agencies and their committees for water, we might as well get it out there and get it done and get it over with.
Will do.
Is there any reason not to do this from your point of view, Dave and Fran?
That's the biggest unknown is what, does Monterey One Water want to move forward? My simple answer was it's unknown. So we need to explore that.
Yeah, I mean, things are at a standstill now. And I mean, that's been my feeling for some time is we have to talk with them. We're partners in this project, and we both have an interest in moving it forward and getting, freeing the hostage. So let's find I think Alvin's idea of the two committees meeting is maybe a good place to start.
Now, Dave, when can we talk about this at the full board level? When do you think it'd be appropriate to talk about it so the public can really know what's going on?
Yeah, we could do it at any time. I think to your point, or the most recent point, trying to have a little bit better barometer on Monterey One Water would make sense. They will meet probably on the 22nd.
Yeah, I think so, because
I'm sorry, 23rd.
they reestablishing their committees too.
Yeah.
They got new members, they reestablishing their committee. So when you think, go ahead there, Director Rowley.
I just want to bring up a new tack on this subject. So when you're finished with it, it's on the same subject, but a slightly different tack. Go ahead. Okay.
Go ahead.
It seems to me that the more we do at the local level, the more we kind of solidify where the momentum already is. It doesn't mean it's going to be a close call. It just means that we can solidify a little bit more. But the real action seems to be at the state level. And I had a conversation, I call it a conversation, it was a few remarks, at a Christmas party with Kevin Tilden. And I asked him, why doesn't he just give up? Because the entire community seems to be on the side of public ownership. And why didn't he just kind of fold up and go away? Words to that effect, believe it or not. And he said, why would we do that? We have a lot of strong support in Sacramento. And the PUC, he added, because they weren't on Sacramento. So now my other tact is, could our legislative committee kind of get activated to try to get in touch with our senator and assemblyman and make a very specific pitch? I mean, don't just get a 10-minute, flyby meeting, but get something more substantive so we can present maybe a full bore argument why we need that, the district needs that, the peninsula needs that, the customers need that, the environment needs that, blah blah blah, and all the economic interests around the community also need that. I just don't know. I think we ought to have a stronger, maybe a more public pitch to some of the elected officials who will have some entree at that level, perhaps greater than we do. I mean, I don't know if the legislative committee has considered any particular action or plan other than stay informed.
Not
They got
this,
a meeting on Thursday.
yeah, we that's right, meeting Thursday. I'm chair of that committee, as far as
Yeah.
I can recall. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave. We haven't discussed this idea there in that committee.
No, we haven't, but we can certainly talk about it on Thursday.
Well, just as a discussion item, because I don't know where it might go. And I mean, and Mary does have some, Mary Adams does have some connections with some people around because of the board membership. So she may have some ideas herself. And anyway, I think it's worth just raising it for discussion as starters.
Okay. Hey, Dave, I know you probably wouldn't want to put this on the March meeting, but how about April April board meeting so you can check with these other agencies on some of these questions that we got and find out where they're going and find out if we can do anything else with the PUC before we put this on the agenda for the public. I like for the public to hear this. I like for the public to know that we're looking at alternatives. So if we can do it publicly, I appreciate that. So you can research some of these other questions and try to fill in the blanks if you can. Any other board questions on this item? Okay, Dave, let's continue on. I'm depressed now. I don't care where you go.
Chair
right.
Edwards, I do see a
Yep.
hand raised, so I would
Oh,
like
okay,
to take
excuse me.
public
Excuse me.
comment before we.
Right.
Right, okay.
Excuse me, Joel, let's go out for public comment on that item.
All right.
Whose hand is raised?
Yes, and at this time, I would like to invite Susan Schiavone. Susan, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Hi, folks. I hope you all are well. I wanted to reinforce what George was talking about. I was going to bring that up myself. I wrote a 2-page letter to the CPUC and sent it to the commissioners versus the email comment area, which I understand. I think they would get it if it goes right to them. Talking about how important this is to have that water purchase agreement signed. I CC'd the governor on that. Because he's appointed every one of those people and he's intimately involved in some of this water stuff that has happened here lately, including the desal plant. So I really agree that it should be addressed somehow to some of these people that are power players in Sacramento. I don't know if John Laird or Don Addis would be people that could help put some pressure on CPUC. I don't know much about all that, but I do know Don Addis was supposed to come down and do a tour of the Monterey One the Monterey, I'm sorry.
Pure Water Monterey, yeah.
Pure Water Monterey
Coming up.
project this month, and she may already have come or she's coming this week. But it's really, I think, important to start talking to some of these representatives, because if they're in an echo chamber up there and they've got lobbyists from Cal-Am all over the place throwing money at people, it really would be very important to let them know how much they're attempting to torture this district and what they're doing to us with this lack of signing this water purchase agreement, especially when they got favorable treatment when they shouldn't have gotten favorable treatment from the Coastal Commission, and to bring them back to bear and to commit to that water purchase agreement. So I just want to add that, and I hope that more information goes out to the public and they're encouraged to respond, because I don't think the public still understands much, and they're much subject to propaganda from the water company, and they are sending out emails. I know you are too now, but they are sending out emails quite often to people, and they're not shy about saying what they want. So I think that the district should not be shy about it either. And I hope you can somehow get the legislative committee to make some contacts with appropriate people up there. Okay, thank you very much, and for everything you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands, so I'll return this back to the committee.
All right, thank you. Dave, let's go with that Seaside Basin Water Quality and Operation meeting.
All right, this is just a one-page staff note, 3 short paragraphs. Maureen, you want to summarize very quickly what you're up to?
Sure. Monterey One Water has been hosting a Seaside Basin and water quality meeting since they started up. At a recent meeting, the Department of Drinking Water asked if we can provide a little more coordination. Monterey One Water's purview is the Pure Water Monterey project, But we have the ASR project, which affects Pure Water Monterey, and Cal-Am has the water production. All three of them affect each other. So we felt it made the most sense for the district to try to take this over. The meeting would follow the quarterly water budget process where Cal-Am, the district, NOAA NIMS, and the Fish and Wildlife Service get together and project what the next 3 months of Cal-Am's production from the Carmel River should be. After that's defined, we can go into this water operations meeting, if you will, and we can talk about the planned volumetric injection and production, any changes we see. We can talk about any water quality anomalies, definitely from Pure Water Monterey standpoint, but also the monitoring wells that the district monitors. And we'd be able to just discuss the water bank and travel time at that meeting as well. They asked the local Department of Drinking Water as well as the Recycled Water Unit be invited. The Regional Water Quality Control Board, certainly Monterey One Water, the district, and Cal-Am would be invited. So just a little more formal coordination with a few more stakeholders. And the city of Seaside. How could I forget that?
I just want to add, I support the idea. I just question about why the water master is not in there. I know the water master has a technical committee. It has a cross section of some of these same, maybe more agencies, just because there are more pumpers involved in that. But would water master be? I'm not saying we modify what we're doing right here, because this is more formal. I think it's supposed to be more formal. But I'm not sure where water master might fit in here, just to be invited.
Absolutely, they will be invited. They have been invited to the meetings that Monterey One Water's hosting. And we're just going to take it from a little more global perspective now than just the Pure Water Monterey and the Seaside groundwater basin, because
Okay.
they're all connected.
Okay, thank you.
I know you probably get on that committee there, Director Riley.
Question.
Since you brought it up.
So
Any other-
would this, yeah, would this coordination address some of the coordination problems that have affected the optimizing ASR production?
In the sense of pending project work, it would. We know that they need to build 2 more production wells. It also allows us to coordinate, and we the district already coordinate with Cal-Am on a daily basis during ASR season. So this would really give more people a heads up on what we're doing with ASR, and hey, we're getting ready to inject is all the infrastructure in the state it needs to be. Did that answer your question? I don't think so.
Yeah, I guess I'm not clear on where there's a lack of coordination now, and whether this change is supposed to solve. I guess I'm just
Correct.
not that. I know we need a lot of coordination. That's important, but what's it? If you can say this arrangement is trying.
You're starting to break up, Karen.
Oh. Just not clear on what's the problem that this, I mean, I have no problem with the district coordinating the coordination, but, and I hope that it'll be helpful, but I'm not clear on what it's trying to solve.
Yeah, what problem we're trying to solve. So
Yeah.
The problem we're trying to solve is we created a quarterly meeting that we've been having. And most of it was about water quality, and all the water quality information is now filed with the, I guess, the regional board. And so it's available through their portal. And we've never had a water quality problem to really dwell on in the 2+ years. But there's still a need to be accommodating to Division of Drinking Water, the regional board, the water master, Monterey One Water ourselves, just about operations in general. So the thought was follow on the quarterly water budget meetings with just a seaside basin style meeting so that, you know, we can continue to accommodate the interests of all those parties. But I suspect over time it will also eventually perhaps go away, you know, when it just operates like it's been around for decades. But anyway, we've been having a meeting. This is just recharacterizing the same meeting.
It sounds a little bit like the state Department of Drinking Water wants these other people involved so they know who they are, what their opinions are, but maybe the vice versa, the same thing. They ought to hear what the Department of Drinking Water is saying.
Yep.
Okay. If no questions, Joel, could you take it out to the public on this one?
Yes, so if you have public comment on this matter, please raise your hand. Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands, so I return this back to the committee.
Thank you. This one closed. Jim, let's do number 8, and then we can go to the slideshow.
Okay, that sounds like a good way to finish. Number 8 is fairly descriptive. There was a request made as to what our legal expenses had been or are continuing to be relative to Pure Water Monterey expansion. I think one of the eye openers for some folks was that as the PUC process for phase 1 just kept going on and going on. And then there were some meetings, and then there were requests to delay a decision, the petition for modification and so forth, that we are funding as part of the pre-construction costs of the expansion, the legal expenses of Perkins Coie, which is Monterey One Water's regulatory attorney. And of course, you know, we're doing pretty much our own thing through DeLay and Laredo. But so we're paying 100% of DeLay and Laredo and 75% of Perkins Coie. There had also been some legal expenses surrounding the defense of the source waters for the expansion, both in terms of water rights memorandum that was written for the supplemental EIR, and then kind of follow-up work on defending the several different source waters that will support the expansion. So what I did in the staff note, as you can see there, is I just managed to quantify what all of the most recent amendment number 6 in the cost sharing agreement was to cover. And so it's not 100% legal. You see Best and Krieger, that's basically law firm doing the construction law and change orders and so forth. And then a little higher on the list, you see Perkins Coie, which is all about the water purchase agreement and the CPUC proceedings. And then I showed their budget and expended and remaining at the end of the staff note on the second page.
Any questions? Go ahead there, Karen.
How does the coordination work between our council and Monterey One Water Council on the CPUC proceedings? Yeah,
so, and Fran, you can address this. We meet regularly with Marina and Marina Coast. But Fran, have you also included Perkins Coie in some of those meetings?
Yes. We call it our agency friends meetings, when we have movement at the PUC or we're trying to anticipate with periodic strategy discussions. And the general participation is by Monterey One Waters Council, Marina Coast Waters Council, and City of Marina Waters Council, because all have been supportive of the amended water purchase agreement and Pure Water Monterey expansion.
Are there general managers? Do they participate in those?
It depends. Sometimes they're invited depending on what the topic is. Sometimes it's just strategy from a procedural point of view. We have had multiple discussions on that. It's been quiet for a while now. There's nothing to discuss. We've actually canceled meetings, waiting for something to happen. So.
Okay, any other questions on this one? Dave, if we're doing budget review, we need to bring this one up to the full board so they know where we're going on it.
Yeah, this is a subcomponent of the Amendment 6 pre-construction work, and I think it's still relatively within budget. I was alarmed by the requests by Perkins Coie for budget increases, but they've really increased the budget, but they haven't shown any expenditures. So yeah, I'm not sure what they're, if they're going to actually use the total of the, 630,000 that they've requested. I'm hard pressed to see how they can do that. But
well, that's another question. Fran, do we look at that kind of work, or do we just pay the bill? They doing work for the district. Are we just letting them, we just paying a bill? Are we looking at their bill and making sure that?
I'd have to defer to the general manager. I don't see that myself.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, we break all the bills that come across are broken into really, well, used to be 4 categories. Now it's really just 3, but we had the deep injection well number 4 was a separate project that we agreed to fund up. And then there is the Amendment 6 cost sharing, which are all the pre-construction costs for the expansion, which include all these things on the first page of the staff note, about $1.5 million. And then we get the purchase water cost billings. And so each of them are categorized differently, and we look at them all, and and the detail is requested. So we will see an invoice from, like, for example, Perkins Coie, in whatever reimbursement request comes from Monterey One Water. So we look at it all, which is, a little bit why we know kind of where the spending is versus where the budget is.
okay, go ahead, Karen.
When I saw that amount budgeted for Perkins Coie, my first reaction to was, what, really? Also, and I guess I just feel as part of our responsibility, since we're paying for 75% of it, that we should just, review the bills and see if the amounts being billed seem justified.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that. I listened to some of the comments, and in a way, like at that board meeting that Karen spoke at, it seemed like they wasn't too into it, or how we can get out of with Cal-Am. They like to play the soft shoe, in my opinion. And so I know we're paying the top dollar over there. I expect top answers instead of trying to get around, stay buddy with Cal-Am. We're paying the bill over there. So you can relay the message, or I will.
There have been quite a few occasions that I felt in the CPUC proceedings, they could have been more helpful.
That's where I'm going.
And it has
Go ahead.
gotten worse. It has gotten worse. Even after our agency friends discussions, there were things that were filed that really were not helpful. And so I think in our last meeting, we did not have Monterey One Water participating from a strategy point of view. I know there's a divided board. Nevertheless, it's hard having a partner who's not, pulling the wagon in the same direction.
Well, y'all have to tell me how y'all want to tighten them up. Because if we footing that bill over there and that 75% does not make me feel good, and I'm not getting the support I feel like we need to get support. I see Monterey One hollering about 42 million. What you want to do about that 42 million? That's why I want to have that meeting with him. So you holler about 42 million, what you want to do about it? I know what I want to do about it.
The board may want to consider, particularly on the legal, that you don't want to reimburse at 75% because you're not getting 75% support, quite frankly. But that's a board decision.
Thank you for bringing it up because I will go there. I will go there.
You're not the only one who's frustrated by it. I have screamed in the general manager's ear and I have thanked him for allowing me to vent. Yeah.
Well, I know it.
You need to discuss this at the board level.
Yes. And that's why I want to have a meeting with them. Okay. Let's go to that last item, Oh, public comment on this one, Joel. Find out.
Yes, as a reminder, if you would like to make public comment, please raise your hand. Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands, so I'll return this back to the committee.
All right, what's that last item? We're doing pretty good. I thought we would.
Yeah, this last one's an update on how we're doing with FEMA and OES reimbursement, and Simona Mosbacher will be presenting.
Yes, hi, thank you. So, and then am I doing this as the board or you wanted me to do this for this meeting? I was a little confused in the beginning, Director.
Okay, the confusion, I didn't want to hear it twice, but since you can rehearse now, and I like for the full board to hear it because we're getting money back. So just your rehearsal. So we'll tell you.
Got it. Perfect. All right, so I've been leading the district's efforts for reimbursement through FEMA and the state. So I'm going to just do a little, let me see if I can share my screen. And just give you guys an update on where we are at in the process and what it involves. Okay, can everybody see that? Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we are applying for two separate grants. There's FEMA, which is federal funds. It's called the Public Assistance Grant, and this is only for public agencies that have sustained damage due to a disaster that was declared by the president. So that once the president declared the winter storms in January as a national emergency, then that opened up FEMA funds. We are also applying at the same time concurrently to the state OES office for the California Disaster Assistance funds. And basically, if we apply for FEMA and we apply for the state will automatically approve anything that FEMA approves. The state works regardless if we apply for the state funding as well. The state works with FEMA and they're basically the applicant for us, and we're the sub-applicant. So the state handles the money and FEMA will approve one of our projects, give the money to the state, and the state will give it to us. If we apply, which we have for the disaster assistance, they do cost sharing, which I'll get to in another slide, but essentially they are going to pay for a portion what FEMA doesn't cover. So we are going to be applying for several damages. The minimum cost for a FEMA project is $3,800. They're not going to reimburse for anything less than that. And OES won't reimburse for anything less than $2,500. This is just a little graphic on the whole FEMA process. So as you can see, it's pretty detailed and there's a lot of steps. It's not just an easy, you apply and you get the money. They want to see a lot of documentation. There's a lot of meetings that we've been having. There's just a lot of steps to it. And we are currently tomorrow, they are going to be on site at Sleepy Hollow as well as the Carmel River, and they're going to look at the weir to inspect the damage and what we've done so far. We've had our recovery scoping meeting. After they look at the damage, then we work on our applications and getting the documentation ready for everything that we've done and cost estimates. And then it kind of goes through a process on FEMA's side where they verify everything and then they'll obligate the funds and send those to the state to then send to us. So this can all take, weeks, months. There is a time frame after the recovery scoping meeting, which we had, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. There's a 60-day time frame for us to identify these damages and give them a cost estimate if they're not completed, which some of ours will not be completed within that 60 days, which is fine. That's expected for a lot of these damages. So there's several categories of work that they reimburse for. There's emergency work and permanent work. Our category A is debris removal. We have we have a lot of debris removal. So originally the road to access the Sleepy Hollow facility had some debris that landed on it and they had to remove that just to access the facility. So that's what we are going to be applying for to get refunded. Then there was some debris that landed near the rearing channel from the road above, and that had to be removed as well. And then there's some debris throughout the Carmel River in several sites that has yet to be removed, but that's what we're planning on doing. Then on the next category, it's permanent work. So roads and bridges. We originally were going to apply because we had to, after we removed the debris from the road, there was potholes and other issues with the road that were kind of exacerbated by the storms, but they weren't directly caused. So we will not get refunded for those funds, unfortunately, because those potholes that were on there were existing already, and we didn't really do a lot of maintenance on that road. So that's something in the future that we can perhaps put some money into, is maintaining that road, because there's going to be more storms down the line, and the same kind of issues are going to be brought up. And if we ever want to get money for that road damages down the line, then they're going to want to make sure that we've been maintaining it. The next category that we are applying for is the public buildings and equipment, and that's going to entail the pumps that are inside of the RAS building, the Sleepy Hollow, and the weir, and also the irrigation tanks, and that's considered permanent work. There's also some separate funds besides the damages that we're applying for that we can get reimbursed for. It's called the mitigation funds. There's 404 and 406. So 406 is any mitigation efforts that we want to make to areas of the facility that were damaged directly. If we have damage like for the pumps and we want to do something to make sure this doesn't happen in the future, then we can pay for those and then get reimbursed by FEMA. But they can't exceed, like it says here, we can't exceed 100% of the cost for repairing the item. And they'll only, if it's in Appendix J, so there's a specific list of cost-effective measures that we can implement if it's something that's not in that list, and they would only cover 15%. So we've been talking with Larry, and there's a couple of mitigation efforts that we want to implement, including the backflow preventer, installing an emergency sump pump, and waterproofing perhaps 2 to 3 feet of the building. But these, we have meetings with the mitigation team. I think I have a meeting this week. So this is something kind of on the side, separate from the damages that we are going to get reimbursed for, but it's something that we should consider, which we are. Some cost share basics. So categories A, that's the debris removal, any work that was completed before the February 25th. So that was the road debris and the debris in the, or near the rearing channel. So for the road, that was, I think, almost 30,000. And then there was another 10,000 for the one on the actual facility property. That will be reimbursed by FEMA 100%. If there's anything after the 25th, which would be like the river debris removal, that's going to be reimbursed at 75%. And then the state picks up 75% of the remaining 25%, which leaves the district only paying 6%, which is nice. Same with the categories for the permanent work. So like the building and the weir, those the district is looking at, if they are approved, paying 6%. Category Z is administration costs. Anytime that me, Maureen, Thomas, and Larry are kind of spending on this, because it is very time consuming, they will reimburse for some of that as well. So FEMA is going to pay us back on work that's not completed based on cost estimates. So we have an estimate for, say, the weir, because we're not planning on having the weir completed by the time we finish submitting. You know, they've said that it's going to cost around $35,000. FEMA will look at that and say, yeah, that sounds like a good estimate. We believe that's what it is. And they'll send us that money based on an estimate, even though the work is not completed. If for some reason we estimated too low, then we would have to apply for a cost adjustment. So that's why we want to be very thorough with our estimates if the work is not completed. And then just a little time frame. So April 24th is our deadline for our damage inventory. That's just identifying all possible damage, which we've pretty much done. And we just want to get our numbers in for estimates by that date. March 7th, which is tomorrow, that's going to be our site inspections. So that'll take most of the day going to the different sites with a couple FEMA representatives. There is a 6-month time frame to complete the emergency work, which is the debris removal. So that should not be a problem. And then there's 18 months to complete any permanent work, which I think we will be in line with. But there's always extensions. They're pretty open with extensions and all that. And that's pretty much it for where we're at right now. If anybody has any questions, you can reach out to me, or you can ask Google right now.
Committee members, any questions?
I would just like Simona to identify herself a little more, so I know what her basic job is.
Yeah, sorry. I assumed everybody knew, but I figure I'm not really on these meetings very much. So I'm Simona Mossbacher, and I'm the HR coordinator and the contract specialist. So I work with a lot of the contracts that we make, and I'm also assisting with grants, and this kind of falls into that line. So yeah, it's my first time working with FEMA and all that, so I'm learning a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead there, Karen. You're on mute.
So the hope is if you hang in there with this, sounds like very labor intensive process, that we could recover a good portion of our the costs we incurred because of
Yes,
this storm.
exactly. And I know initially when we came to the board to get approval for, I think it was like 250,000, that was definitely on the high side. Now, as we're going through the damages, it's decreased. So it's definitely going to be less than 250 that was originally estimated. It's going to be a lot less than that, but hopefully we can recover most of it.
That's wonderful. Really appreciate your efforts. Now, Cal-Am owns the road, right? The road to the.
Yes, so
we
Cal-Am
maintain
owns it and we lease it. And so we have an agreement with them, and there's specific language in there about who's responsible for road repairs and all that. And Larry has said that it's like 50-50, but that's not what the language is in the agreement. So they're going to be looking at the agreement, and we'll see. But yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
Okay, a little bit of a complication, but
yeah,
you're talking about getting reimbursement for costs for repairs that we did, that costs we incurred. So hopefully it'll be all right.
So is the river still flowing? Well, we can't see how that bottom look.
Yes, it's still flowing. I don't think they've gotten a clear view of the intake screen yet. I don't know if Maureen, you've got any different information, or Simona.
I thought they had, right, Maureen?
They've gotten a look at most of the damage, but not quite all of it. I think they know what needs to be fixed at this point.
Okay, I hope we try to get as much as we can get out of FEMA and don't close it off, and we find out that that river bottom needs a lot of work, you know, so let's keep an opening and try to get every dollar you can. Hey, you done an outstanding job on your presentation. I'll be looking forward for it at the regular board meeting. I think you're ready for the big show now. I think she's ready, Dave.
Yeah, and
Dave,
get ready for this also. Our insurance deductible is $500,000. So we're thinking of taking our flood drought reserve and upping it to cover at least the deductible amount for any future problems that, say, won't get reimbursed by FEMA or OES.
okay, that sound good. I got one more for you, Dave. How much water have we injected into the ground? Can you give me a number?
Yeah,
Give
about
us-
638 acre feet.
That's where you made my day.
Well, it's below what could have been.
Well, we know why it's 2 wells shut down, or Cal-Am using them for something else, but with 1 and 2, I'm proud of them. So,
Yeah, well, we just backed off for the last 3 days, and I'm not sure how much longer it'll take place, but they were looking at levels on the Forest Lake tanks getting lower than what they were comfortable with, which seemed to imply there might be some leaks in the distribution system. And because it's been raining, it's awfully hard to spot leaks, right? Everything looks like a leak when the ground is wet. But hopefully they'll rectify that situation in the next day or two, and we can get back up to 3,000 gallons per minute.
okay, and that permit is good for how long?
The end of May.
Okay, so we can keep storms coming through.
Are-
Uh,
are-
Go ahead,
Just,
George.
just quickly, are you still pumping, estimated another 2 weeks or more?
Oh, yeah, John so we've got an atmospheric river heading our way this weekend.
Or more even, okay.
If that hits, we'll gain another couple of weeks of injection. We still have a couple of weeks, I think, based on the last set of rains. So every time it rains an inch and a half, you get another couple of weeks.
Okay,
And plus, that's why I asked how long that permit is. We can go to May. So
Yeah.
these storms keep coming through, we can, keep pumping it in there as long as the river's flowing. So Dave, you got any more for us?
That will do it. And we actually
Okay.
had 2 other items on this agenda when we started that we knew we had to take off to shorten it. So.
Well, I'm proud of you. You all made. Fran, anything else for us? Thank you for all your hard work. All right, committee members, anything? And I want to thank the staff. Hey, meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
all.
you.
Fran, call me.
Joel, thanks for getting me in, you and
Yeah.
Sarah.